All right, so for the next one, what we're going to do here is do the create an application that will find the area of a circle. Just to go through some more examples of a simple solution and how you go about getting there in input process output paradigm. All right, we're also going to talk a little bit more about variables in this one, as well as describing in detail what the difference is between an identifier, a variable, and a named constant. So what I've done is I've already created, or getting ready to create, a project. I put this in another package, which is going to be edu.northeaststate.dlblair. I created the name of this area of a circle class, as well as I made sure to generate comments and public static void main, the entry point of all Java applications. So that would write that for me. So let's finish that. And here we go. I don't have to change this. It's already done for me, thanks to Eclipse. I come here, change the purpose. Find the area of a circle. The rest of that's fine, so I'm going to collapse that. Come down here to the method. The Java entry point of execution is the main method. Okay, then I can collapse that. And now I'm down here again. Okay, so what we want to do here is I want to talk about first off, a little bit of terminology. And being a computer science professional, you need to understand a lot of the terminology. So let's be clear about what is an identifier, what is a variable, the difference between the two, and what is a named constant, okay, as well as what is a package, what is a class, and so forth. So in this case, let's look at our package. The package is a way that Java isolates your source code and your classes into an area that doesn't conflict with perhaps another developer that has described another class called exactly the same thing, area of a circle. That way the two of you can actually have, or 3 or 5 or 10 can actually have the name of the class name be the same. As long as it's in a unique package, then they will not conflict. Okay, and that's the reason you'll see a lot of times packages described, and it's just customary to do this, as the URL of the company. In this case, it's a school, edu.northeaststate, and then find something unique at the end, such as your username or developer name. And in my case, it's just DL Blair. Yours would be your username in this class. Okay. Now, if you try to compile this, and I'll show you how to do this in class from the command line. Now, it takes a little bit more effort because you have to define the class path to that particular package. And if you remember, if we look at the Finder on Mac and the Windows Explorer, then you'll have to go find that area in your directory structure. I have mine in a workspace called CISP1010, and then I'll find that area of circle project. I look in the source, and there's the EDU, the Northeast State, the DL Blair, and then inside that's where my source code lives. All right, now the class, that defines this scope of this particular object in Java. It is an identifier. The identifier, that is a keyword. The name of the class is an identifier. Okay, so we have keywords in Java that mean something very specific, and we can't use them for anything else. And that is, in this case, we have public, which modifies the identifier. Class, both are keywords. Then we have the keyword up here, package. This name that we named it, we could have named it anything. I called it area of a circle. then that's an identifier. Now down here, I'm going to create some variables to hold my inputs. So in this case, well, what's the area of a circle? All right, so we would write down. So let's say I didn't know that. Let's say I did not know the area of a circle, and I didn't know pi. Then probably what I would do is unless I needed to do some pretty deep research, I would just grab a browser and say the area of a triangle, and that's what I did in the last one, area of a circle, do this, and this way I can have a way to double check my test scores, let's say. So pi r squared, I think everybody already knew that, and so equals the area, so the radius squared. So I come back over to my application, and I'm going to write area of a circle is equal to pi. So I'm going to just type out pi r radius and then squared. So a lot of times in text, to do an easy exponent, you just put the caret symbol or the up arrow, whatever you want to call it, and then the exponent there. All right, so I'm going to put an area to define my variables. And these are local variables. They are local to the scope of the main. Later on, we'll also find out how to define variables outside of the main. But for now, everything you do needs to be inside of the main. All right. So once I define my local variables, I know from last time, well, I'm going to need a place to store my results, and I think I'm going to need a floating point value. So I'm going to go ahead and create a double. All right, I'm going to call it area of the circle. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and initialize that. So I'm good so far. I also know from last time that I need a scanner object. Input equal new scanner, open paren, and inside system.in. All right. I know I'm also going in, so I have, I'm going to mouse over my scanner. I'm going to select Java util, and that's going to automatically place my import package, my import library up here. Okay, so let's come back down. Now I will define my input, and let's just say that I want the user to always put in an integer value for my radius. Okay, and that's going to equal 0 initially. But here's something we have to define pi. All right, so that is something that we're going to do is call, and we're going to use something called a named constant. Okay, if you have a copy of the book, it's in 2.7 of the book. It's called named constant. It's on page 43. If you don't have the book, if you're accessing it through Revel, then just look for 2.7 in the contents. All right, so how do I define a constant in Java? We use a keyword called final. That means it cannot be changed once I create it. Create a final of type double, and then call it, in this case, pi, which makes the most sense. All right, and that's going to equal 3.1415, and I could keep going, but I'm only going to go out I guess my finger's on the wrong keys there, 14159. Now what this does is once I set that variable to a value, then I cannot change it anywhere else in my application. That's why it's called a constant. And it's always, constants are always all uppercase. Okay, that's the style that we that we have decided to go by. All right, so now there's my variables I know I will need. And now I'm going to put my input, which I only need the radius because I've already got pi defined as a double. So these are variables, right? All of these are called variable names. What's the difference between a variable and an identifier in Java? I said this was an identifier, right? So that's user defined, and I call this class area of a circle. The difference between this identifier and that identifier is this one's also called a variable. And anytime we have defined a variable of some data type, then that means that we can change that variable, the contents of that variable. So it's variable. It makes sense. The reason this is not a variable, pi, is that we cannot change it. So that is not a variable. It's called a named constant. Okay, so that's the terminology you need to be aware of going forward. So let's continue on. So I have some pseudocode here that's going to help me out. I'm going to continue writing my pseudocode. So here I'm going to get input, more specific, radius from user. Okay, then calculate area of area of the circle. And then I just simply want to output that area to the monitor. Okay, so you see how we're using our pseudocode to create our comments. That is by far the easiest way to comment. You don't want to wait until after you've done all your coding and come back in and comment. It's, for one thing, you'll always, it's a lot bigger of a pain. And second, you'll forget to comment. You'll turn in your code without commenting. Okay. Anyway, so here we go. Let's get the radius of the radius from the user. And so if we remember, last time we forgot the prompt, so I'm going to do that first this time. So I'm learning as I go. Print, I know to use a print instead of print line because the print leaves a cursor at the end of my text. Here I'm going to say, please enter a value for the radius of a circle. Okay, right there. I put the space in there so there would be a space at the end of my text for where the cursor is, and then I'm going to get the input back from the user. That's going to come into radius, radius, is equal to input dot next integer. Oops. Okay. So now, once again, I want to go through the extra step of testing this. So I'm going to put my test code here at the bottom so I can get rid of it easily. System.out.println, and here I just want to simply output the radius to see if it's what I expect it is. Okay, I'm going to save that and I'm going to run it. So there's my prompt. I'm going to put in 5 and out comes 5. So I know everything is compiling and working exactly like I think. Okay, let's go to the next step. Let's make a calculation. That's the area of the circle is equal to pi times r times, now how do I do square? Well, in Java, there is something called the math library, and it's a static library, but you don't really need to know that. Math.pow for power. So now I'm going to raise this to the power of something. Well, it's going to be 2. And if you look over here, this tells you how to use it. And this is pretty handy. All right, so this, you can always come back to this. If the second argument is a positive or negative 0, then the result is 1. That's the second, and so it tells you how it works. Okay, so we see a double of type A, I mean an argument or a parameter of type A and B, which is data type 2 doubles. Okay, so pi r, so that's going to be my radius raised to a power. So you can see I figured this out that I'm using it incorrectly. So I'm actually need to raise the results of, the radius to a power and send the results times pi into the area of the circle. All right, so radius, and then 2, and now I can get rid of this radius here. And so that's how you use the math.pow or power function. Okay, you send it the radius, comma 2, which is the exponent. Okay, then I can save this. Oh, let's replace the radius. I meant to replace the radius with this. So let's copy this down, wherever copy is. I want to copy that down to here and paste it. Okay, save this, run it. So if my circle has a radius of 1, for example, then I know my area is just going to be, because 1 raised to the 2 power is just going to be 1. And then the pi is 3.1415, so that results in just the unit circle is what this is called. The radius of 1 is simply 3.14159. Okay, so I know that it seems like it's working okay. I can try to run this and put 2 in there. Radius is 2. That's going to change it significantly. So 2 raised to the 2 power, well, 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 3.1415 is going to be 12 point something, because 4 times 3 is 12. And so it looks right. So learn to estimate your answers. And in fact, like I showed you earlier, if you go back to this little handy calculator on Google, then I can put in the radius of 2, and let's make sure that I get what I think. Now, they're rounded to 2 decimal places, and we'll figure out how to do that later. So that's 12.57, and in my application, my output was actually 12.56636, all right, which is more accurate. Then I just have to output my answer back to the system monitor, system.out.println. The area of this circle is, do an implicit conversion of the circle, CIRCLE, and then comment my test code out. All right, save that. Let's run it one more time. Put in 1, my unit circle, see what my results. The area of this circle is 3.1415, so everything looks good. All right,